everyone, it's Miss Dania. I'm actually at home and not in the school hall, which I promised. I've said to Liz that I would introduce. So Liz is a growth mindset, and she's actually a growth mindset expert spot, sorry, and she's been in to do some training with the staff. So we've all had a teacher training day with Liz and lots of sessions. And actually, when I've spent time with Liz, I don't only reflect on my own classroom practice, but I actually reflect on myself and my own growth mindset. So hopefully this will give you a good opportunity to reflect not only on kind of you as a parent, but yourself as well. So I hope you find it really useful. It is 6 o'clock, so we're going to make a prompt start and I'm going to hand over to Liz.
Fabulous. Thank you for that introduction, Alice. That was lovely. So people are still coming
Liz,
through.
our sound isn't connected at the moment. It's still, I'm just give me a minute.
Okay, no problem.
I know. I know. What was I saying about technical? We probably can manage, but it's not ideal. Yeah, when you just blast that out, we might have to. I think. Okay, Liz, we're going to go with it, but our volume isn't great.
Oh, right. Okay. I shall try to speak with clarity and precision. Okay. Right. We've still got what a turnout. This is brilliant. We've still got a few people coming through. If you can mute your mics, that would be great. And then it just stops any feedback that we might get. So I've still got some coming through.
Yeah. All done now.
I'll mute as well as they come through. Fabulous. Right. Okay. Right then. So this is one of 4 sessions that we've arranged, and I hope you find it fruitful, valuable, and are able to take some golden nuggets and hints and tips as well. Each session is about half an hour, but I will hang around after if need be. If you've got any questions or want any bits of information. So I am co-founder of Grow Your Mindset. My name is Liz Cronshaw, and I've been developing mindset awareness across educational settings now since 2018. And I work from nurseries all the way up to universities. And like Alice said, we not only work with children in developing mindset awareness, but obviously with staff and those within the school community as well. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to bring this right back to the beginning in terms of what is a mindset, because very often we hear the word bandied about, and we hear it a lot on television at the moment, especially if you're into your sports and you can hear the pundits talking. They talk a lot about coach mindset, manager's mindset, player's mindset, and so on and so forth. So we hear this word, but actually we're going to unpick it a little bit and understand it even more. Okay, so we've still got people coming through. This is fab. So I'll keep bringing people in and get started. So this is one of my favorite phrases you can see on the screen. Once your mindset changes, everything on the outside changes too. And it's absolutely true. There is so much that connects to our way of thinking that impacts on our emotions and how we feel, but also our behavior, so how we react and respond in situations as well. So our mindset, in a way, is the first domino, and then it knocks onto other dominoes and it has an impact. Okay, so once you become more mindset aware, it actually has an onset impact on other areas of our lives as well. Okay, so we're going to take this right back. That is our objective for this session. So let's find out what that actually means. So if you've heard the word growth mindset before, we're going to add some more information to it. So if you think about the definition of mindset, if you go and get a dictionary and look for the word mindset, this is something that you would find. So a mindset is a set of beliefs or a way of thinking that determines your behavior, your outlook, and your attitude. So it's everything about you as an individual. It's your characteristics and it's your persona. And we all know how powerful the brain is in that it controls everything. But our mindset, our way of thinking, actually controls the brain because the thought processes we have impact on the neural activity within the brain. And the mindset that we all have is molded from the day we're born. So from the day we're born up to around about age 22, our brain function, our mindset is molded in 3 stages of influence. Okay, now those stages are 0 to 7, 8 to 13, and then 14 to 22. Okay. In those early stages, we're like sponges soaking up lots of information about our environment and making sense of the world around us. We're also developing our inner core belief system and our emotional well-being. Okay. So in primary school, those first stages of influence, so 0 to 7, 8 to 13, are really prominent. Now, 8 to 13, we begin to role model the people who we've been influenced by, which are predominantly parents, grandparents, if we've got siblings and friendship groups in that in 8 to 13 as well. So we begin to adopt similar attitudes and beliefs. And I tend to say your mindset is molded and influenced by the main 5 people that you tend to spend your time with. Okay. And I'm in my 50s now, and I say things now that my mum used to say when she was my age or even younger. So I've adopted similar phrases and things that I've been immersed into growing up. Now, it says on the screen that learning is limitless, and it absolutely is. Often, the person to put a cap on our learning is ourselves in terms of our little inner critic or our inner thinking voice. Whether you're 4 or 104, we are all able to learn and develop, okay? But sometimes, because our mindset is molded up to age 22, our way of thinking and our perception of the world in which we live is sort of like developed and fixed. So at 22, we sort of hit the world of work, or we go off to university, or whatever our choice is. And we've sort of developed an understanding of ourselves in terms of our abilities, things we're good at, the skills that we have, things that we might leave well alone because we deem ourselves not to be that type of person. So in those early years up to 22, we very much soak up people's opinion and judgment of ourselves, okay? And sometimes that opinion is really supportive, but actually we can internalize it very differently. And I'll give some examples of that as we go along. So let's have a little look at the choices in terms of mindset we have, okay? So on the screen, you can see an image of the brain, and this is showing the positioning of the 2 mindsets that I'm going to explore over the next 4 sessions. So we have the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. I tend to refer to them as upstairs, downstairs mindset because you can see the position of them. Now, the fixed mindset is our dominant mindset, and it's the mindset, our way of thinking, that is quite judgmental, it's quite self-doubting, and it's quite critical, okay? But it's normal. It's absolutely a normal mindset that we all have. The thing to remember here, though, is that this mindset fires up from the day we're born, okay? And it's emotionally driven. It's very impulsive to react, so it comes out to play really, really quickly. And it becomes our default setting because, and this is information that is really important to understand, the growth mindset, which is our calmer mindset, it's more logical and rational in its thinking because it looks for evidence of truth. So do you know those phrases that you sometimes adopt where you say, oh, I'll never be good at that. Things always go wrong for me. Those sorts of phrases are always, how come they can do it and I can't? Those phrases are generated through the fixed mindset. And when we say to ourselves, we'll never be able to do something, it becomes habit forming, but it also becomes a belief. Whereas the growth mindset would look at it differently in terms of How do I know that next week or next month I won't be able to do this challenge or this new bit of learning that's in front of me at the moment? And sometimes what we do, and I've been in a year 5 class today, who were really open and honest about their fixed mindsets. And they're really open that they have phrases that they have said to themselves. And often things like, I can't do this, I'm rubbish, why can they do it and I can't? What if it all goes wrong? All those, if you're a what if person, that is a direct connection to your fixed mindset. Because when we what if, we are basically trying to predict the future without any evidence. But then we start to convince ourselves that things will happen, or we start to believe it to be true. Okay, so it's really getting connected with this fixed mindset. We're not going to ignore it. We're going to take care of it. And the biggest thing for me as a teacher and as a parent and now as a business owner is, as we start talking about mindset in more detail over the sessions, you will start thinking of people who you are around you, like your children. It might be your husband, your wife, your partner. It might be work colleagues that you work with, and you might start thinking about them and their mindset. But what I would say is bring it back to you. Start to understand it for yourself, because that's where you'll have the biggest impact. Because as a teacher, I was influencing mindset all the time in my classroom, and I wanted the children to develop their growth mindset. But actually, I needed to understand my mindset to understand their mindset. The same as a parent. If I'd have known about this when I was parenting my son, who's 26 now, I'd have parented very differently. Okay, so it's that idea of taking information away and using what we see. Okay, so the fixed mindset fires up from the day we're born. The growth mindset doesn't mature until we're 25 to 30 years of age, which means naturally, as human beings, we default to a critical, judgmental mindset, which means we see them from an early age, where young children might avoid challenges. They might see a challenge as something that I can't do it, it's too hard, and it's going to show weakness, and they may worry about failing, or may worry about what other people will think if they can't do that challenge. And purely and simply, the fixed mindset is doing its job. The amount of times I go into a classroom and ask a question and children will put their hands up and then take it down again, and I ask them, why do we do that? And it's either one of 3 answers. I'm worried I might not have the right answer. I'm worried I might sound silly. And what if people laugh at me? So it's that idea of the fixed mindset is flaring up. Oh, you want to take your hand down because what if it's wrong? And the fixed mindset's prime job is to keep us safe and protected. We've had this part of the brain for thousands of years, from when we were cave people. So this part of the brain fires up in order to protect us. So those moments where we feel a bit uncomfortable and it's like, oh, what if I go to that party and I don't know anybody? Or what if I go for a job promotion and I don't know all the questions that they're going to ask me and I'm unprepared? The fixed mindset will try to keep us safe and persuade us to step back. And it does its job really, really well. But what it also does is it creates barriers. So it creates barriers to opportunity. It creates barriers to learning sometimes, because we then avoid challenges, or we see them as something that might show weakness. We worry about making mistakes. We become critical of feedback. We don't like to be told when we've got things wrong, or we see it as a criticism, or we see it as maybe somebody doesn't like us because they're telling us how to do it. So the fixed mindset really does create our perspective of the world in which we live. So the work I do is provide information around mindset, but also encourage children to tap into the growth mindset, because even though it doesn't mature till later on, it doesn't mean we can't tap into it. And the more we do that, it actually creates a different perspective of the world in which we live, and also our attitude and belief and focus towards learning in general. Okay, so we're going to have a little look in a bit more detail at both of these mindsets. So on the screen here, you can see the characteristics and behaviours we have when we have a fixed mindset. The brain's got a lock on it, and that's because it is holding us back. It does become a barrier unless we take care of it. We're not going to ignore it, okay? Because when you have unhelpful thoughts, if we try to suppress them, they just come back stronger. So this is about actually knowing you're having a fixed mindset, to then take that mindset on a journey to become more growth orientated. And that's the whole procedure, really. So first of all, and I want you to do this for yourself. Around the head are some of the common character behaviours linked to a fixed mindset. And these generate from a really early age, from 0 to 7, 8 to 13. They're pretty much start to become adopted. And scientists have actually found we're actually born quite growth mindset. If you think of a young child, a young toddler, very curious, wanting to find out information, they love challenges. I remember my Ben with the shape sorter, trying to get all the shapes in the sorter and loving that challenge. They don't judge, okay? They have humour in terms of when something goes wrong, when they're learning to walk, they fall down, and then they pick themselves up again. So they actually have that idea of resilience and deliberate effort and persistence. But then we lose some of those behaviours, and scientists have found that we actually become 80% fixed by the time we're about 10 years old, okay? And that is no fault of ours, it's the way the brain's wired. We are defaulting to the fixed mindset. So these thought bubbles, I want you to connect with what you are resonating with, because if you're resonating with some of these, it's highly likely your children will be as well. So I resonate with 5 of these when I looked at them. If you're resonating with all of them, that's absolutely fine. It's not a shameful admission. It's not an embarrassment. It's really becoming mindset aware. So I used to avoid challenges as a child, okay? And that's because when I look back, there's always reasons behind our behaviours. And I used to avoid challenges because I've got an older sister. And I used to compare myself to her quite a lot because she was quite academic. She was always an achiever. She got a Queen's Guide Award. She got grade 8 in trombone and so on and so forth. And I always felt I was a little bit in her shadow, okay? So I used to avoid challenges. So I'd be the child sharpening the pencil in class, or Miss kind of go to the toilet quite regularly. And the reason I'd avoid it is because I didn't feel I'd be able to do a good enough job at it. I didn't feel I had the skills. So it's almost like my mindset was I had to perform straight away. So learning to me was almost, I didn't have that understanding of learning. It was about I had to know what to do because I worried about what other people would think. So that fear of failing, or the consequence of failing or making mistakes, was quite high in my perceptions, okay? Or I'd give a challenge a go and then give up quickly. So, oh, I can't do it after 5 minutes, therefore I'm not this type of person. So I'd sort of back off from it, or I'd pass it to somebody else to do. Okay, notably my parents. Now, before I knew about mindset, it'd been my husband. Okay, so giving up quickly as opposed to deliberately practicing and sticking with something. And so avoiding challenges, giving up quickly, worrying about failing. I had a little inner critic that would go into overdrive, and I'd have those phrases I'd say to myself: how come I can't do it? I'm rubbish at this. Oh, I'm just not a maths person because I like art and music. So we sort of label ourselves, but we also get given labels too. So as young children and going into teens, we've been given people's opinion in terms of what we can do, what we're good at, and therefore we tend to put more energy there, but also shut doors of opportunity in other areas because we deem that we're not that type of person. Okay, and our inner critic will tell us that. My other big one on here is being perfect, so perfectionism. Okay, and I know that stems from my mum, because my mum used to sort of put me right a lot. Yeah, she'd sort of, not in a nasty way, but just like, she was very precise in information and facts. So she'd always say, oh no, Liz, it wasn't then, it was then. So I always sort of think I had to be right with everything. So that's sort of like created barriers in itself, because would I put myself up for a challenge if I felt I couldn't do a perfect job and it would show weakness and then I'd get judged by other people? No, I wouldn't. So my mindset was trying to keep myself to avoid those challenges. So think about yourself. Which categories would you say your fixed mindset comes on to roost? Do you avoid asking and answering questions in group situations, like those children that put their hand up and take it down? As an adult, if you're in a staff meeting or you're in a business and in a workplace, would you be the person sat back and hope someone else asks the question? Okay. Do we say, I can't, quite quickly? So you're making an assumption, and the fixed mindset loves to make assumptions and jump to conclusions. So we assume we can't do something quite quickly, and that forms a barrier. When someone else is doing something well and we compare ourselves with the fixed mindset, do we then feel threatened by their success and see their success as our failure? Okay. And very often, I don't know about you, but when you're learning something new, I don't know whether you've ever done this, but look at someone else who's maybe developed the skill or has mastered it, and you compare yourself in a learning stage with somebody else's mastery, and then look at them and think, I'll never be able to do it. I'll never be as good as that. Yet they may have put hours and hours and hours of practicing. Yeah, we're very impulsive to respond and make those judgments. The other one on here is see feedback as a personal attack. And this is where you might react quite emotionally, or if you're a people pleaser, this could be one for you where you think that person now is coming at you negatively, so you internalize that as a negative thing. I will say it depends how feedback's delivered, okay? Because if the person who's delivering the feedback has got a fixed mindset at the time, then language is huge. Language is massive around mindset because our thoughts become our words. So language, once you understand mindset, your language changes as well. And that's my son, Ben, I mentioned. His is that feedback one. So whenever I gave him advice, it was always like, Mum, don't tell me, or stop telling me what to do, or I'll never be able to do it. And, he'd get emotional. And I know why now, because as a parent and my perfectionism, I was the type of person that would sort of take over a little bit. So if he ever had anything to do for school at primary school where he had to make a solar system or a Tudor house, and he'd come down from his bedroom with it made, and I'd be like, oh, that's really lovely. What about having a look at this as well, or doing this? So my perfectionism, out of love and care, would be like, oh, let's just tweak it a bit. And I did it out of love and care because of what he was going to take into school. But actually what he grew up internalizing was, doesn't matter what I do, I'll never be good enough. And I don't beat myself up about it, okay, but I am aware. So my language around feedback has changed massively in terms of how I communicate it, okay. So understanding the fixed mindset is the first port of call, and that's what I want to get across today. Even though it's about growth mindset, we cannot ignore this mindset because it is 5 times stronger and 16 times faster to react than the growth mindset. So it's not going anywhere. And because we've had it for thousands of years since we were cave people, in order to keep us safe and protected, it's part of the way the brain is wired. Okay. Now, the other mindset, the growth mindset, you'll notice the lock's now gone. And it's our more logical, rational mindset, but it doesn't mature till we're later in life. But in terms of becoming aware of it, we can tap into it. You'll notice the bubbles are the opposites of what I've just talked about. So in the past where I'd avoid challenges, I'd give up quickly, it'd be about being perfect. So those bubbles for me now, I've changed my mindset, my perspective. So I don't avoid challenge anymore because the first thing I say to myself is the reason it feels uncomfortable is because it's unfamiliar. If there's one word I want you to start using for yourself, but also with your children, is when they're struggling with something, it's because it's unfamiliar. When you say, I can't do it, it's unfamiliar. It's too hard, it's unfamiliar. Until we get more familiar with it, then it becomes easier. But the first thing I also say to myself is, I don't want easy, because I can already do that. what is the point to keep repeating things I can already do? So actually, I want a challenge. And I think we have a landscape and perspective of challenges being a bad thing because we associate it with being hard and struggle, okay, and failing and making mistakes. Therefore, we sort of back away sometimes from things, or we give it a quick go and then make an assumption we can't do it. So now I embrace a challenge because I know, even in my 50s, I'm going to grow from it. Remember, learning is limitless, okay? I don't give up quickly now because I give myself time to do it. And I think we live in such a fast-paced world where if you want a book, Amazon, you get it the next day. If you want food, Just Eat, it's there in half an hour. We've got social media and that sort of influence in terms of devices, and so it's constant entertainment. And when it comes to learning isn't like that. And I think we very quickly, especially now, not so much when I was growing up, but especially now, we jump to a conclusion much quicker because we're impatient and we want things to happen quick. And therefore, we either give up or we'll copy off someone else or we'll wait for someone else to do it and then we'll do it. So we sort of like don't give ourselves time. My perfectionism is now nudges of progress. Whoever invented the term practice makes perfect, no. Practice does not make perfect because perfect doesn't exist. It's like running a race without a finishing line. So now I always say and reinforce practice allows for progress. And it's the progress that the growth mindset focuses on. The growth mindset will not focus on the outcome like the grade or the end product. The fixed mindset focuses on that in terms of I want it to be brilliant. The growth mindset focuses on how to get to that product. So if you're embracing the challenge, looking at feedback, learning from your mistakes, the outcome will happen, okay? But it's getting to the outcome that's the important bit because that's where we grow the most. So it's those nudges of progress and celebrating those rather than a grade or a result. So it might be, do you know what? I really stuck at that and I really focused hard. Or that went wrong and I tried a different strategy. Or I bounced back from that. It didn't quite go the way I thought it would. So focus on the behaviours around a growth mindset rather than a score, a grade, or an outcome. So if a child gets a result in a spelling test, for example, 15 out of 20 one week and 18 the next week, it's not, oh, how come you got some wrong? It's, oh, you made progress of 2. That's brilliant. Would you say you focused a bit more or da-da-da? If they had a bit of a dip, what can we now do? What actions can we put in to make some more progress with this? Okay, so it's focusing on those behaviours. Right, so growth mindset. My inner critic is now my inner coach. I talk to myself very differently. And I no longer worry about failing and judgment from others because I put that energy back to me. I can't control what people think. They'll think it anyway. So why waste my thoughts on that? Let's put the thought process back on where it is I want to improve and grow and break down barriers rather than create barriers. Okay, so I'm mindful of time, but I just want to wrap up with a little bit of a story just to bring this first session. But I will be hanging around if you want to just stay on and ask something in the chat or whatever. So I'm going to read you a story, and it's called The Chicken and the Eagle. Okay, so there was once a farmer, and this farmer was a very keen rock climber. And one day he went out and he was faced with a particularly challenging rock face. And he decided to have a go. And halfway up the rock face, he came to a ledge, and it was a large ledge. And on the ledge was a large nest, and in the nest were 3 eggs, and they were eagle eggs. Now, he knew it was undoubtedly illegal and unecological, but he decided to carefully pick one of the eggs up, checking the mother eagle wasn't around, and carefully popped it into his rucksack. He then continued with his climb, popped the rucksack in his car, drove back to his farm, and placed that egg in the chicken house, in the hen house. Now, that night, the mother hen sat on the egg, and she was the proudest chicken you ever saw. And over time, that egg hatched, and out of it came a baby eagling, and it looked around its surroundings, saw the mother hen, and squawked "Mama" across the hen house. Now, from that day on, the eagle, who thought he was a chicken, began to look at its brother and sister chicks and learn all the things that chickens do, like scratching in the dirt for worms, flying a few feet into the air, and then crashing to the earth in a pile of dust and feathers. But believing above all else, it was totally and absolutely a chicken. Now, later on in its life, the eagle who thought he was a chicken happened to look up at the sky, and high overhead on the thermal currents was the most beautiful, golden, powerful eagle. And he looked up and turned to his farmyard neighbour and he said, "Wow, what's that?" And his neighbour said, "Now that is the king of the birds. That is an eagle. We were only chickens. We're birds of the earth." And so it was that he lived and died a chicken, because that's all he thought he was. Now, I do apologise if you thought it was going to be a happy ending, but what I want to reinforce is that idea of we soak up information, we soak up our assumptions, and we jump to conclusions about our abilities and our skills. We label ourselves in terms of subjects, and we sort of stick to a certain pathway. Okay, which is what the chicken did. He was influenced by, the eagle was influenced by the chickens, and therefore believed that was him, and therefore didn't push himself to be anything else. So I hope I've sort of set a foundation in terms of mindset awareness. It has been a bit of a whistle-stop half an hour. The next sessions, I'm going to be adding a little bit more meat to the bones, because we're in session 2, we're going to explore the 5 learning blocks, and our mindset towards each one will determine our outcomes, our progress. So we've got challenge, effort, mistakes, feedback, and self-belief. And those 5 learning blocks, if you look at them with your fixed mindset eyes, are very different to your growth mindset eyes. So we're going to explore that in a bit more detail. And that is on the 12th of March. So the 12th of March, the same link that you've used to get on today, and we'll add some more to that. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll hang around a little bit, but yeah, session 1. Thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure school do too.